week on the Nutrition Heretic podcast, we find out what happens to your mental and physical health when you start working for me. Our audio engineer, Nikola Popovic, shares with us how listening to the episodes while editing the podcast encouraged him to return to the diet of his youth growing up in rural Croatia, and how his health improved dramatically as a result. Coming up next.
Meet Gina. Gina wanted to lose weight, so she spent 2 years fasting, detoxing, and dabbling with vegan diets while practicing a shit ton of yoga to lose 25 pounds. But it took so long that nobody noticed. Then, Gina started Frenching her food by eating fatty cheeses, butter, sausages, and red meat, and lost 15 more pounds in only 2 months. Everybody noticed this time. Frenching your food unlocks the riddle of weight loss that skinny French chicks use to slim down, look young, and live longer despite doing everything wrong. Be like Gina. Start Frenching your food today by visiting nutritionheretic.com/Frenching.
Fat is bad for you.
I just pop a pill and I'm fine.
Meat is murder.
It's time for bad food punishment. It's time for real nourishment. It's time for the Nutrition Heretic.
The following program is provided as information only and may not be construed as medical or health advice. It is not intended to diagnose, treat, or cure any disease. No action or inaction should be taken solely on the basis of the information provided here. Please consult with a licensed healthcare professional or doctor on any matter relating to your health and well-being.
Aloha! This is Adrian, the Nutrition Heretic, and this week we are having a special guest heretic, Nikola Popovic, who is our audio engineer. Seems that as he was listening to the show and editing from week to week, he decided to start incorporating some of the recommendations of our guests and myself, and just some of the basic ideas behind how to eat better and how food impacts your life. And so he dropped this bomb on me a couple of weeks ago while we were doing a test on a Facebook Live, and he actually told me what he was up to and how it's changed his life. So I thought it would be great to have him here as inspiration for all of you. Welcome to the show, Nikola.
Well, thank you. After such an incredible introduction, you have to feel like $1 million. And I really do.
Okay. So tell us, what was, before you started working with me, what was your diet like?
Well, my diet was, like layered through different periods of life. But specifically before I started working with you, it wasn't really good. It was something that you would, pour over with holy water and then it would burn. Like that kind of bad. So it was mostly industrially processed foods. It was a lot of, junk food, snacks. I mean, it's
Nutella.
not my...
Was there Nutella? Okay, yeah.
Yeah, here and there, not all the time, but here and there. And it wasn't really stuff that was that anybody should eat. I mean, I did eat like fruits and vegetables. I did eat meat. I did eat dairy and all the other stuff. But most of it was industrially processed. So salami. Then I had like vegetable oils that I used. And the other different store-bought foods that don't really get you the nourishment and all the stuff that you really need. So it was more like, calories. It was the chemicals and everything else that was in it. But there wasn't a lot of N from this nourishment.
Right. Yeah. And I know that you told me before you grew up in the countryside.
Yeah.
So a lot of what we talk about here on the show is probably the food that you grew up with. But then somewhere you took a wrong turn and started, how did that come about? Like, you know, you grew up on some, you said you grew up like basically on like a lane, like you didn't even have a neighborhood.
Yeah, it was near the airport. So I grew up in a little spot that was really close to the airport.
Which airport? Zagreb?
No. No, it's in Pula. So
Pula, that's right.
Yeah, down there in Istria. And it was around 4 or 5 houses next to us, or near to us, because most of them weren't next to us. And it was a pretty unusual childhood because, you know, I was kind of secluded from society and from people. So I spent most of my childhood days playing in dirt and swinging around on trees and just living in a fantasy world because I didn't have anything else to do. I had a brother and a sister, but that was it. You know, we had the 3 of us, and we spent our days quite carefree, and so was our nutrition, I must say, because when I was little, we had a lot of land. So we had an orchard, we had a lot of land with vegetables growing, and we had, you know, like wine, grape rose. So we made our own wine, and we had livestock, chickens, cows, pigs. We also owned a fishing boat. So we got a lot of fresh fish. In a nutshell, we had, you know, we were self-sufficient.
Right.
So we didn't need any money at all because in that period, we're talking around, you know, 91 to 95, it was war here. And although we weren't, you know, touched by the hand of war as people in Slavonia, for example, you can still sense it.
Yes.
Because it was, you know, all over the country. And despite all of that, we had a really good life.
Wow.
And what happened was that my family actually got into dispute, you know, amongst each other. And there happened a split. So my grandparents and my uncle were on one side and my parents were on the other side. And it's just family tragedy, and I won't go into it because we'll need a different episode just for that. Yeah. And so the bottom line of that is that suddenly I got cut off from all of that which I had before.
So
you know,
all the food stuff, like the farm living. Okay.
Yeah, the fresh eggs, the fresh milk, the raw honey, the fish, everything was gone just like in an instant.
Was that because that was your grandparents? I mean, this is getting into your family life, but was that your grandparents' property?
Well, yeah.
Okay.
They owned it. So when they got into this fight, they kind of separated the estate, and we got a little part for ourselves, and they took the other part, which was
the productive part.
The productive part, right? And so from there on, we also got in a lot of financial trouble because my mother got sick at some point, and she was very, very ill, terminally ill. She was bedridden for a couple of years. And, you know, it's hard to eat quality stuff when you cannot afford it.
Yes.
And that's when we introduced a lot of industrial foods, store-bought foods, so canned items and a lot of, you know, just cheap articles, cheap food products that you can find. And it was a long period I spent on that diet. It lasted around until I got away from where I lived. So I decided to go live on my own, to, you know, leave the house. And I started my own, so quote unquote, to say life. And then it got worse, actually,
Yeah.
because I went out without a penny. I
Right.
had very little money that was left, and actually I lived in a warehouse for some time.
Wow.
Yeah, and I was totally broke, so no money, not all. And a typical meal at that period, in the very beginning, was like nothing during the day while I work, and then I come home. And before I come home, I go to the supermarket, and then I buy rice, and I buy a bag of tuna-flavored mayonnaise.
Tuna-flavored mayonnaise.
Yeah.
I never
Yeah.
heard of such a thing.
Well, come to Croatia.
So is it like is it made from like the oil from tuna cans? Like
I don't know. I really didn't pay much attention to food labels at that period.
Clearly.
Yeah. That was all that I could afford at the time.
Wow.
And that was my, dinner, and later in the morning breakfast. And maybe if there was something left, it was lunch. And that was the good meal, because I also had the very first day or the second, something like that, I had only a pack of spaghetti and nothing to put in. And fortunately, I found, and please don't laugh when I say this, I found a jar of Nutella in the warehouse.
Okay.
And since I didn't have any bread, you piece what you have, and you have spaghetti with Nutella. And let me tell you something. Yeah, it wasn't good at all, because the spaghetti was all full of water, and when you put water and Nutella together, it's like, yeah. And
I thought maybe you were going to say that you came up with a new dessert. Like, it wasn't half bad.
I wish it was half, just half bad. It was just all bad. So it did last a little bit until I got my first paycheck, and then I started, I could afford some better groceries for myself, but it still wasn't what I had before. I did buy fruits and vegetables, and I started to cook a lot and all that jazz, but it was just bought in the store. It wasn't neither organic, it wasn't, cared for as it should. The food, it was just transported from God knows where.
Yeah, exactly. Maybe not even from Croatia or
probably,
anywhere in former Yugoslavia.
And so the next couple of years I spent moving around, and I lived from today to tomorrow, worked a lot of different jobs until I moved to my current place in Umag. Where I found my future and now present wife, and decided to stay. And that's when things started to shift a little bit more toward the positive.
Okay.
So I started to cook a little bit more. And at first it was a little bit, awkward for me to go to the market, to the farmer's market, because I had a lot of social anxiety. And it was far more convenient for me to just go to a grocery store, to a supermarket, pick anything you need, don't talk to anybody, just come to the register and pay for your stuff and just leave, It was mentally much more easier for me.
Right.
And I don't know, it just kind of happened that I noticed the difference when I went actually to the market with my wife and got something. And then the next day I went to the supermarket and got the exact same stuff. For example, let's say apples.
Right.
And I could really feel the difference, in the taste, in the smell, in the overall feeling of fullness,
Yes.
It really does have a much better effect on you. It lasts longer, and it makes you feel better after you eat it.
Right. There's a sense of being satisfied.
Yeah, the satisfaction, and I can say that this was the beginning of the going back to the roots of everything, because before that point, I didn't really look at food like that. I wasn't aware of the difference.
Right. Now, was this when you're talking about like this, Apple scenario, is this before or after you started working with me?
No, much more before.
Okay, that's what I thought.
And yeah, and now we're leading into that. After some time, when you're married and you have kids, especially you of all people know that sometimes you don't have time for yourself, or sometimes you even don't have the will to do anything as it should be done.
Right.
And at some point, largely after I started doing freelancing, that was another major turning point in my life. I spent a lot of time, sitting in my chair. And especially in the very beginning, where you have to, blood and sweat and tears for 12 hours a day just to get started, I did really neglect my overall feeding habits and my recreation habits as well, because I was always into sports.
Yeah.
And I'm a pretty active guy, and I like to eat well. And when I made that shift to freelance, it kind of got pushed, to the side. And most of the time my wife was cooking because I didn't have the time to do it. And it's not like I want to embarrass her publicly, but she doesn't know how to cook well,
Well, she didn't have the same rural upbringing that you did, right?
Yes,
she grew up in the city?
Yeah, she grew up in the city, and she didn't cook as I did when I was young, because I have two siblings, a younger brother and sister, and I used to cook for us because we were often alone at home because the parents were working. So I took care of them, and one thing leads to another, and so I was pretty good at cooking, actually. And and her motto is the quickest and the easiest, the better. So she doesn't really look at what should be and how should it be done, and she looks at it at this way: I want to do it quick, I want to do it fast, I want to eat, and that's all. So
I think more and more females across the globe are embracing that idea. And I think part of that is an attempt to unload the stereotypical role of female.
Yeah, probably.
Being in the kitchen. And I think that's where, at least I know when I was growing up, a lot of it seemed to stem from that when I would hear women say that. But
yeah, and I guess there's also the modern, way of life. You don't have time for anything.
Well, you have commercials telling you that all day long. You don't have time for this. Oh no, we did it for you.
Exactly.
Blue Apron, whatever.
So that period in my life lasted around 2 years, and I did started to notice a difference in my overall health. So I started feeling sluggish. I had less and less energy, and I was more and more susceptible to viruses and to colds.
Yeah.
I mean, it was common for me to have at least one cold per winter, season.
Right.
But it started to get a little bit more often,
Yeah.
And I was also drinking a lot at that time because I don't know, I was just in that kind of place at that time.
Right.
Because I had a lot of issues with myself. There was a lot of, I had a lack of confidence. I had the before mentioned social anxiety.
Right.
And I didn't just have a really good opinion of myself. I had low self-esteem, and I don't know, I was a pretty, open person as a child, and a lot of things happened to me while I was growing up that affected me this way. And the alcohol kind of turned all of that to zero.
It numbs you.
yeah, it numbed me and it put me back in that state how I was before all of that, you know?
Right.
And I don't know, I'm just such a person that enjoys the fine things in life, but I have the tendency to overuse it, you know, to abuse
Yeah.
stuff. And you know, that's too much of any good stuff isn't good actually for you, it becomes bad. So when you mix all of that together, I started feeling, you know, very bad. And at one night, I started to feel my heart getting sort of squeezed, you know?
Yep.
I felt this, it wasn't a chest pain, but I wasn't really comfortable, neither sitting nor standing nor laying, you know? I felt a big pressure
Yeah.
and it really scared me. It really scared me. And around that point, I started working with you. So I always say that everything in my life happens for a reason
Yeah.
when it should happen, you know?
Right.
And I've been going through my whole life guided by this intuition, this woman's intuition. And it kind of just happens to me. And the next day I went, you know, to the market
Yeah.
and I thought it was because I ate too much meat.
Okay.
But it wasn't the real meat. It was, you know, like pates and the salamis and all that other stuff that's, you know, can't really be classified as meat.
Right. Well, that's the thing, is that it's one of those are foods that, like, if you could get that at the market and somebody's grandma made it, it's, you know, perfectly fine, most likely. But then you get the ones, you know, that are in tin cans or jars or whatever, and you don't know what the heck they did to it in the factory.
And the next day I went to the market, to the to the farmer's market.
Yeah.
And I bought, you know, like 2 full bags just of vegetables and fruits. So I wanted, you know, to make a difference, but I didn't know where to start.
Yes.
Because I didn't have a clue. And luckily I started doing your podcasts. And I believe the first one I did was with Bruce Fife.
The coconut oil guy, yeah.
Yeah, the coconut oil guy. And while I was editing, I listened to what he said, and it kind of made sense to me, you know, because he really backed it up with details and with proof that it could really be, you know, if this was a commercial to buy something, I was hooked, you know. So I was sold. And I bought the coconut oil, and I still remember the first time I tried it. So I had just a little teaspoon to see how it will affect me. And the instant I swallowed it, I felt a rush of energy. And I mean, I did hear in the podcast about what the effects are on the body, but I wanted to see it on my own.
Right.
And right after that rush of energy, I started smiling, you know, for just no reason. I was so happy at that point. I didn't know why was it happening, but I felt so light and so good, and I just smiled, you know. And I saw that there is something to it. And of course, while I was working, while I was editing, I listened to more and more stuff. And while I was introduced to more and more ideas and knowledge, I began to slowly change my diet. And that led to a lot of improvement and a lot of changes during the next 2 years. And I can say now that this is kind of the culmination of all of these changes in my life.
Wow, that's fantastic. And I mean, you're lucky because, as you know, a lot of the people that listen to the podcast, they're dealing with some serious health problems, you know, and unfortunately, you know, just making the kind of changes that you made may not be the prescription for them, right? Because they have autoimmune disease or, you know, leukemia, whatever. But, you know, I mean, it just goes to show the power of food. When you have, you basically had a good start. You're very lucky because your parents had you in a situation where you got the best, of nourishment as a child. So it was really just a matter of your body remembering what it was like growing up on those foods. So,
right, because sorry to interrupt
no,
you,
it's
but
okay.
I really didn't have any major, ailment or disease in my entire life. So
Right.
I did have the occasional flu or
Right.
cold, or I had a cavity in my teeth or
Mm-hmm.
something like that, but nothing major in all of my life. No sicknesses, no anything.
Right.
And I'm really grateful for that. And now that I changed the way I eat and I take care of my body now, it's even less than before. So I believe we will come to that, because I do have some changes, change report, so to say, what happened with my body. I did have some problems before, and after I started with the changed diet, my condition really improved.
Right. Would you say that the biggest influence on your health was switching from no, but I mean, as far as like what you're consuming now versus before, is it really the processed food, the less vegetable oil and more lard and real fats? And you told me that you went for about 4 months without sugar. Like what do you think it's a combination of all of that, or do you feel that there were certain things that had bigger impact than others?
I think it was a combination of everything, because I do believe in synergy of things,
Yeah, absolutely.
Just like dominoes, you trip one and all of the rest will follow, all of them will fall. So in a way, it's all connected. My big change started when I made the first step to change my diet, after I got the information from you.
Right.
And after I went and researched a lot of stuff that I was going to do. And that was the trigger point for me. So personally, I started with consuming more real foods and avoiding the processed foods.
Mm-hmm.
And I saw the improvement in a lot of areas, and I liked it. And I continued, to go down that path. Let's see what can we else do to improve.
Yeah. Now, I know you've been doing some interesting exercises.
Yes. Well, I'm a lot into body workouts.
Mm-hmm.
So it's also street workouts, but I'm not, that much outside. I'm more at home. And I am really lucky that we have a lot of outside fitness parks here where I live. Yeah, so it's a bonus. You go with the kids, you play there, and you can also exercise. And I'm lucky that my younger daughter is also a lot into these kinds of things. So we do it together,
right?
Like a couple of fitness, not fanatics, but people that really enjoy, doing this. And also I started doing something that is called the Wim Hof method.
Right. We discussed that.
Yeah, that's the other part of the exercise. So basically what you do is you do breathing exercises to energize yourself and to get yourself full of oxygen. And it really helps to calm down your nerves and to feel a lot better and to perform much better with your exercises, because it gets you pumped up full with oxygen, and you can last much longer than normally,
Right.
And right after that, it's the cold shower. So just
that's where you lose me. You lose me on the cold shower. I went to the beach 2 days ago, and it's, the water's like relatively warm, but just that first dip. It's too cold.
My wife's the same, and I must I must say I'm really proud of myself because it's fall here,
Mm-hmm.
and it's only started recently to feel like real fall. I think 2 days ago because it started to be colder.
Right.
And I was taking a swim in the sea, I believe, 2 weeks ago, and that's a personal record for me because I didn't do it anytime. It's the first time I did it in my life
Right.
that I've bathed in the sea for that long.
Wow.
So I did really see some improvements there as well.
Yeah, and the sea is great for absorbing minerals. A lot of people who have joint aches and things like that, if they could just get themselves into water, into salt water, it really can help because so much of our illness comes from a lack of minerals. Like we talk a lot, especially in the US, we talk a lot about vitamins and we talk about the phytochemicals, but we forget that the minerals are really what sustains life in the sense that, for example, when we talk about water consumption and, we have to get so many, ounces of water per day. I am one of these people that believes that it's not about water as much as it is about the minerals contained in water. Where, water has traditionally been a source of minerals, even salt water, which has the highest concentration. But people here get too caught up in the fact that there's no calories in water. So they don't really care. So, like we have a lot of bottled water that's sold that's completely stripped of minerals. And it's literally just H2O. It's basically a science project. Whereas, a proper spring water will have, those minerals that we, for example, we just did the episode with Carol and Dean and she talks about magnesium, which is plentiful in salt water.
Oh, yeah.
And, it's plentiful in salt water, but most people are not drinking that, and when they do, they drink it as coffee and tea or something like that. So, yeah, I mean, there's just so much more to that picture.
And it kind of makes sense to me because it's not a theory of mine, but I just thought about it. You know how some people have the belief that we came from the sea, that all life evolved from the sea. So in a way, it makes sense to me that we feel so good when we go back to that sea from which we came from.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And actually, I'm going to talk about Korean natural farming again, because I just went and did a weekend workshop with Master Cho, and that's exactly what he was talking about. And you'd be surprised, as a former farmer yourself, what adding a little seawater to your crops does, or to your animals. Put it in their water, mix it with their food. I put it on an orange tree in front of my house. That tree had fruit that was splitting, and on the bitter, dry side, now they're juicy and they no longer split.
From a little seawater.
A little seawater, and they're super sweet now.
Wow, that's interesting.
Yeah, so we think about why do some crops taste crappier than others? Why do commercially raised vegetables taste bad and organically or otherwise naturally grown products generally taste better? It's mineral content is what I'm finding. And by adding a little seawater to my vegetables, they're all coming out with much better flavor than even the stuff I can buy that's, organic here, which unfortunately organic has really taken, I guess it always was, but it tends to be conventionally raised, meaning that the mindset about the way things are raised is still conventional. However, they're just using the non-industrialized chemical version of essentially the same solutions. Does that make sense?
Yeah, definitely.
and where Korean farming works on like how do we build the soil to get it healthier. So, topsoil, I forget how many hundreds of years it takes to get, a quarter of an inch of topsoil. And people with this method are growing like, 3 inches of topsoil in 2 months, and like ridiculous, amounts of topsoil, which is actually what I'm working on right now in my own yard. But I digress. So, how do you source foods now? Is it mostly just going to the smaller markets?
Yeah, well, the beautiful thing about beating social anxiety is that you can, for once, actually talk to people,
Right.
and ask them stuff and reach out to people that you don't know. Mm-hmm. And so little by little, I gathered information from the people that work there, and I found out where I can buy raw milk, where
Right.
I can buy eggs. And well, I'm pretty lucky because we have a really good farmer there on the market. They have a family business. So it's called a OPG here. So it's basically it's a family business. They grow food and then sell it on the market. And I didn't really go into what are they using, how they produce their food. I didn't really go to that detail. But what I can tell you is that the food is delicious. So as long as the food is delicious, I'm satisfied. Yeah. And as for all the rest, I believe it will come with time, because I still have to make connections with people and source the purest of the pure that I can find here. Right, exactly. Because it's a little bit hard because people are used here doing things, in a certain way. And then you come to them with an idea that you heard from somebody from another state, from, the other side of the earth, basically. And then they just look at you, what? Right. No, it's here too. It's here too. People act like, they always poo-poo the things that I say. As a matter of fact, some people I know who live in Hawaii and they've, been here for a long time were ridiculing me for talking about, the effects of GMO. And they're like, oh, well, that's not true. And I'm like, it's okay. So where's your science degree? Oh, that's right. You don't have one. You just watch these guys on TV who get paid a lot of money to tell you that it's all okay. Meanwhile, disease and infertility and all of these things are rising. What's really ironic is that one of them recently decided he was going to go vegetarian. And I was like, really? I thought food didn't matter. I thought food didn't do anything to you. By the way, he was an alcoholic. He's an alcoholic. And I always find that kind of laughable. It's like, I'm drinking way too much, so I'm going to give up meat. Yeah. Well, at least there's the will to do things. Maybe with time things will fit into place. Maybe they won't, but who knows? Yeah, I think there's a certain path that a lot of people have to take before they kind of come to their senses and check their egos at the back door. Definitely. Well, who knows? Maybe if I didn't met you, I could have probably gone vegetarian as well. Maybe it's possible too. I would have tried it, but I know myself, I couldn't live without meat, so nothing. Well, I mean, if you did do it, that's the thing is that, none of these diets are like horrible per se. It's when they turn into cults and when they, when somebody will, sometimes people just do this stuff just to inconvenience other people. We get this a lot where, people will say, I'm gluten intolerant. Make sure that there's something that I can eat at your party. It's like, you bring your own food if that's really that much of a problem. But that's not, not my place to say. But seriously, people will say that. And then, the next party you go to, you see them eating a pizza. And you're like, really? I ain't no gluten-free pizza. So, there's a lot of people who do it for those reasons. And then there's people who just want to one up other people. And maybe it was a pizza that JP made. Did you see that?
Oh, no, I haven't seen that one.
No, it was, I'm not sure what it was. It was a cucumber pizza.
Oh.
Yeah, he made a cucumber pizza.
I did not
The
see
crust was from cucumber, and of course the toppings were cucumber, and the sauce was cucumber, and it was just delicious, you know,
Right.
raw cucumber. Yeah.
This concludes the first part of our interview with our guest heretic, Nikola Popovic, our very own audio engineer for the show. Tune in next week when Nikola continues to talk about how his dietary approach has healed him from mood disorders, reverse tooth decay, and his 1-year anniversary of having no cold or flu. That's next week on the Nutrition Heretic Podcast.
The Nutrition Heretic Podcast is a production of Savor the Journey, LLC. Our audio editor is Nikola Popovic. Our podcast manager is Crystal McLean. And our operations manager is Michelle Med. I'm your host, Adrian Hugh, the Nutrition Heretic. You can find us at the new and improved nutritionheretic.com, where you can download the Nutrition Heretic's free shit list of 7 health foods to avoid like the plague. You can also listen to previous episodes at nutritionheretic.com/podcast. Be sure to like us on social media for updates. Our Facebook page is facebook.com/nutritionheretic and on Twitter @NutriHeretic. Contact us with show ideas, questions, or if you want to be a guest. And don't forget to rate our podcast on iTunes and Stitcher.